What if the greatest discoveries of the ancient world weren't lost to time, but deliberately hidden in plain sight? Picture this: a priest in ancient Egypt etching strange symbols onto a temple wall, a medieval alchemist scribbling coded recipes for elixirs, or a secret society passing down forbidden knowledge through whispers only the initiated could understand. For thousands of years, cultures around the globe have crafted intricate secret languages, not just to communicate, but to guard their most sacred truths from prying eyes. These weren't mere codes, they were linguistic fortresses built to withstand curiosity, conquest, and even time itself. Today, we're unraveling 26 of history's most enigmatic secret languages, each one a puzzle box waiting to be opened. From the cryptic glyphs of the Maya to the shadowy dialects of underground mystic orders, these systems weren't just about secrecy, they were about power. Imagine a world where understanding a single word could mean the difference between enlightenment and exile, where knowledge was so valuable it had to be armored in layers of mystery. Some of these languages protected sacred healing practices, others shielded revolutionary astronomical findings, and a few were even designed to communicate with the divine. But here's the most fascinating part: these ancient codes aren't just relics, they're mirrors. Behind every symbol, every twisted alphabet, lies a story about what humanity fears, reveres, and fights to preserve. As we decode these hidden tongues together, you'll see how they shaped empires, sparked rebellions, and even influenced the languages we speak today. This isn't just a tour of forgotten scripts, it's a journey into the minds of those who dared to think differently, to protect what mattered most, and to leave behind whispers that still echo across centuries. Ready to crack the vault? Let's begin. Think about a world where knowledge wasn't just power, it was life itself. For ancient cultures, secret languages weren't games or puzzles. They were survival tools. Picture the Egyptian priesthood standing in the shadow of towering temples, etching hieroglyphs that only the chosen could decipher. These symbols weren't just art, they were locks on a vault holding the secrets of the gods. If the wrong hands learned how to summon divine forces or manipulate sacred rituals, chaos could unravel the very fabric of their society. Now shift to medieval Europe, where alchemists hunched over manuscripts filled with cryptic symbols, a dragon swallowing its tail, a sun fused with a crescent moon. At first glance, it might look like superstition, but these were careful codes disguising formulas for medicines, metals, and even early chemical discoveries. Why hide such breakthroughs? Because in an age where innovation could be labeled heresy, secrecy wasn't just about prestige, it was about staying alive. One wrong word, and you might find yourself at the stake, but the stakes weren't always life and death. Sometimes secret languages were about control. Take the Inca Empire's Quipu, a language of knotted strings that recorded everything from tax records to astronomical data. Only trained officials could read them, ensuring that knowledge stayed in the hands of the elite. Or consider the Nushu script of China, developed by women who were forbidden formal education. They wove their words into embroidery, creating a hidden sisterhood of poetry and protest. What's striking is how these systems mirror the fears and priorities of their time. A coded language might protect sacred texts from invaders, like the Vatican's encrypted manuscripts during the Renaissance. Or it could shield revolutionary ideas like Galileo's anagram puzzles, hiding his discoveries about Saturn's rings until he was ready to reveal them. Even today, we see echoes of this in digital encryption, proof that the urge to protect knowledge is timeless. So when we unravel these ancient codes, we're not just translating words. We're decoding the values of entire civilizations. Every hidden syllable whispers a story about what they treasured, what they feared, and what they were willing to fight for. And that's the real magic, not just in the secrets themselves, but in why they were worth keeping. The enigma of Egyptian hieroglyphs runs far deeper than most realize. At first glance, those intricate carvings on temple walls might seem like straightforward records of pharaohs and gods. But look closer, and you'll discover a labyrinth of meaning, a language designed to conceal as much as it revealed. Take the Book of the Dead, a text meant to guide souls through the afterlife. Modern translations suggest entire passages were written in a priestly cipher, with layers of wordplay and symbolism lost to time. A single hieroglyph could represent an object, a sound, or even a cosmic concept, depending on who was reading it. What made this system so impenetrable? The priesthood didn't just write, they engineered their language like a vault. Some hieroglyphs were reserved exclusively for sacred spaces, their true meanings known only to high-ranking initiates. Others were deliberately misleading, with harmless-looking symbols masking dangerous knowledge. For instance, spells to summon deities might be written in a way that, if mispronounced, would render them powerless, or worse, unleash unintended consequences. This wasn't just about keeping secrets from outsiders, it was about safeguarding the balance of the universe itself. And then there's the mystery of the Rosetta Stone. While it gave scholars the key to decoding basic hieroglyphs, it's like comparing a children's primer to a locked library. The stone translated bureaucratic decrees, not the esoteric rituals hidden in temple sanctuaries. Even today, researchers debate the meaning of certain glyph clusters in the pyramid texts, where celestial maps and resurrection rites might be woven into the very shapes of the symbols. Some theorize that the spacing and orientation of hieroglyphs hold mathematical codes, aligning with star patterns or sacred geometry. But perhaps the most tantalizing question isn't what these symbols say, it's why they were encrypted so meticulously. Imagine a world where knowledge of the Nile's flooding cycles or the movements of Sirius could determine an empire's survival. By controlling that information, the priesthood held unimaginable power. Yet they also protected it. In an age without firewalls or encryption software, their language was the firewall. Every stroke of the chisel was a calculated act of preservation, ensuring that sacred truths would only resonate with those prepared to wield them wisely. So when we stare at these ancient carvings, we're not just seeing words, we're witnessing a dialogue across millennia, where every curve and line was a boundary between the profane and the profound. And somewhere in those untranslated passages, there might still be echoes waiting to be heard. The Celtic Druids carried their wisdom not on parchment, but in the very breath of their voices, a living library of chants, laws, and celestial secrets passed down through generations without a single written word. This wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. By forbidding written records, they ensured their knowledge could never be stolen, only earned through years of initiation. Yet hidden in plain sight along the edges of standing stones, their cryptic Ogam Script lies waiting. A series of slashes and notches resembling tree branches, these carvings weren't meant for common eyes. Scholars suggest each mark corresponded to sacred trees, birch for new beginnings, oak for strength, yew for the afterlife, transforming simple inscriptions into layered metaphors. But here's the twist, Ogam wasn't just an alphabet, it was a cipher. Some inscriptions align with solstice sunbeams, revealing hidden messages when shadows strike at precise angles. Others appear to map medicinal herbs, like the Dior symbol doubling as code for oak bark's healing properties. The Druids' obsession with memory takes on new meaning when you realize their forgotten language might have been a failsafe, a way to preserve star charts or ancestral rites even if their oral traditions were shattered. And shattered they were. When Roman armies crushed Druidic strongholds, they didn't just burn groves, they severed an unbroken chain of spoken knowledge stretching back centuries. Today, reconstructing their teachings is like trying to hear an echo in a storm. Fragments survive in medieval Irish texts, where Ogam appears alongside tales of shape-shifting and prophecy. But were these later inventions or faded remnants of the original wisdom? Modern linguists face a paradox. The more they decode Ogam's structure, the clearer it becomes that its true power lay in the unwritten, the inflections, the pauses, the rituals that once brought these symbols to life. Perhaps the greatest secret of the Druids wasn't in the carvings at all, but in why they chose stone over scrolls. In a world where invaders could burn libraries, words etched into the land itself became immortal. Every Ogam stroke was a pact with time, a whisper saying, "You might decode our letters, but you'll never capture our voices." And so their full teachings remain just beyond reach, like moonlight on water, visible but impossible to hold. No artifact has taunted linguists and cryptographers quite like the Voinish Manuscript. This 200-page puzzle, penned in the 15th century, brims with curling script that resembles no known language, its letters looping like vines across pages adorned with surreal plants, celestial diagrams, and naked women bathing in emerald green pools. For centuries, scholars have wrestled with its secrets. Is it an encrypted herbal guide, a coded alchemical treatise, or perhaps something far stranger? The manuscript's alphabet alone is a riddle. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Celtic Ogham, Voinish script doesn't match any linguistic family. Its characters flow in rhythmic patterns, yet statistical analysis reveals eerie quirks. Certain symbols appear only at the start of words, others cluster like repeated codes. Some researchers argue these patterns mirror natural language structures, while others insist it's an elaborate cipher, a Renaissance-era encryption meant to baffle. Even World War II codebreakers, fresh from cracking Nazi Enigma machines, threw up their hands in defeat. Then there are the illustrations. Pages bloom with fantastical flora, plants bearing no resemblance to earthly botany, their roots twisted into cryptic sigils. One theory suggests these are symbolic representations of medicinal herbs, their true identities disguised to protect proprietary knowledge. A medieval apothecary might encode recipes for rare tinctures, ensuring only guild members could decipher them. But why include astrological charts or those enigmatic bathing scenes? Some speculate the manuscript merges science and spirituality, documenting a lost tradition where healing and cosmic forces intertwined. The most tantalizing clue lies in its parchment. Radiocarbon dating places it between 1404 and 1438, likely originating in northern Italy. Yet its vellum shows no signs of wear, no smudges, no marginal notes hinting it was cherished but never used. Was it a failed experiment, a treasure meant for eyes that never saw it? Or, as some fringe theorists propose, a deliberate work of nonsense crafted to deceive a wealthy patron? What makes the Voynich Manuscript endure isn't just its resistance to translation. It's the possibility that behind its swirling script lies a world utterly foreign to us. Every failed decipherment whispers the same humbling truth. Some languages don't just conceal information, they guard entire ways of thinking. And so the manuscript sits patient as a sphinx, waiting for the day its first reader returns. Imagine a language where every letter isn't just a sound, it's a living force, a fragment of divine energy woven into creation itself. That's the heart of Kabbalah's secret symbols, where Hebrew letters transform into keys for unlocking the universe's deepest mysteries. Take the letter Aleph, for example. To most, it's just the first character of the alphabet, but to Kabbalists, it's a cosmic blueprint, its shape representing the unity of heaven and earth, its numerical value, one echoing the singularity of God. This wasn't mere poetry, it was a radical way of seeing language as architecture, where words could build bridges to the divine. The Zohar, Kabbalah's foundational text, takes this further with its labyrinthine commentaries on the Torah. Here, scripture becomes a mirror reflecting infinite layers of meaning. A single verse about Jacob's ladder might hide coded instructions for spiritual ascent, its words rearranged through Timura, a cipher swapping letters based on sacred patterns. Worse, misreading these symbols wasn't just an academic error. Tradition warned that distorting divine names could unravel spiritual harmonies, inviting chaos. This made Kabbalistic study a high-stakes pursuit, reserved for those deemed spiritually ready. Even the great medieval scholar Maimonides cautioned against delving too soon, comparing it to handing a flaming torch to a child. Yet the most intriguing secrets lie in gematria, the art of extracting meaning from numbers. When Kabbalists calculated that the Hebrew words for love, ahava, and one, echad, both equal 13, they weren't playing word games. They were revealing hidden connections, suggesting that love is the force binding creation into unity. Modern scholars still grapple with passages in the Zohar describing celestial palaces or the Sephirot, the 10 divine emanations, wondering if these are metaphors, maps of consciousness, or something beyond human comprehension. What's striking is how Kabbalah's coded language survived persecution. During the Spanish Inquisition, Jewish mystics smuggled teachings out in laundry lists or market ledgers, their true meaning visible only to initiates. Later, Renaissance magicians like Johann Reuchlin borrowed Kabbalistic techniques, convinced they could harness angelic powers through Hebrew incantations. Even Isaac Newton, in his secret alchemical notebooks, scribbled Hebrew letters alongside chemical symbols, seeking the Creator's hand in nature. Today, as linguists and theologians pore over the Zohar with AI-powered tools, they're uncovering patterns that suggest we've only scratched the surface. Some passages appear to respond to different numerical keys under varying lights, like a spiritual combination lock. Others hint at lost oral traditions, whispered corrections to written texts, ensuring the most dangerous knowledge remained unrecorded. Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson of Kabbalah's sacred symbols. True understanding isn't just about decoding. It's about transformation, where every letter becomes a step on a path too perilous to walk alone. In the labyrinthine alleys of 19th century India, a single word could mean life or death if you knew how to listen. The Thuggee cult's secret language, Ramasi, wasn't just a code. It was a weapon disguised as harmless merchant banter, its phrases masked chilling intent. A mention of the weather might signal an ambush, while fetching water could mean a body needed disposal. This linguistic camouflage allowed Thuggees to operate for centuries, their ritualized stranglings blamed on bandits or wild animals. But the brilliance of Ramasi lay in its duality. To outsiders, it sounded like ordinary conversation. To initiates, every syllable was a step in a deadly dance. The British East India Company's crackdown revealed just how sophisticated this system was. When colonial officers finally deciphered Ramasi, they uncovered a lexicon of deception. Words for everyday objects, a turban, a road, even bread, held alternate meanings tied to murder. A good harvest referred to a successful killing spree, while sowing seeds meant selecting new recruits. What made Ramasi so effective was its adaptability. Unlike rigid ciphers, it evolved with regional dialects, ensuring it remained undetectable to authorities. But its downfall came from an unexpected source, a captured Thuggee named Feringhea, whose confession peeled back the layers of this linguistic labyrinth. Yet Ramessi's legacy raises a darker question. How many other secret languages have rewritten history in the shadows? The lingua franca of Mediterranean pirates, the coded hobo symbols of Depression-era America, even the whistle languages of the Canary Islands, all served as tools for communities operating outside the law. What sets Ramassi apart is its intimacy with violence. This wasn't just about hiding, it was about orchestrating terror in plain sight. The British response was brutal. By the 1850s, thousands of Thuggees had been hanged or imprisoned, their language erased from public record. But fragments survive in colonial archives, a haunting reminder of how words can be twisted into weapons. Today, cryptographers study Ramassi not for its brutality, but for its ingenuity. It stands as a testament to language's power to conceal, to control, and when cracked, to conquer. The Thuggees are gone, but their shadow tongue whispers a timeless warning. Trust no conversation until you've heard it in every possible tongue. Buried beneath the volcanic ash of Thera and scattered across the ruins of Knossos, the enigmatic script of Linear taunts us with its silence. Unlike its cousin Linear B, deciphered in the 1950s to reveal an early form of Greek Linear, refuses to yield its secrets. These clay tablets, etched with graceful symbols resembling birds and vessels, hold the untold stories of the Minoans, Europe's first advanced civilization. Were they inventory lists of saffron and bronze, as their later Linear B counterparts suggest? Or do they whisper of lost rituals to the bull god, or maritime routes that stretched from Egypt to the Aegean? The mystery deepens when you consider the script structure. Linear shares around 70 symbols with Linear B, yet the language itself remains alien. Some linguists hear faint echoes of Greek, while others argue it's a language isolate, a linguistic orphan with no known relatives. One theory suggests it encodes a precursor to Etruscan, the vanished tongue of pre-Roman Italy. Another proposes links to Luwian, spoken in ancient Anatolia, but without a bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone, every hypothesis remains suspended in uncertainty. What makes Linear uniquely frustrating is the context of its discovery. These tablets weren't buried in temples or tombs. They were found in storerooms and administrative quarters, often alongside stunning frescoes of leaping dolphins and serpent priestesses. This was a practical script used by bureaucrats and merchants, yet the symbols themselves seem to dance between function and artistry. A single glyph might depict a chariot wheel while also representing a syllable, blurring the line between writing and icon. The most tantalizing clues lie in the repeated clusters of symbols that appear across tablets like refrains. Some scholars believe these mark royal names or sacred invocations. Others think they're accounting terms, perhaps tracking the distribution of grain or the movement of ships. But the Minoans' true genius might be hidden in their silence. By leaving no grand translations, they force us to confront how much we still don't understand about their world. Their script isn't just a puzzle, it's a mirror reflecting our own limits. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Linear isn't what it says, but what it represents. A civilization so sophisticated that even its mundane records were encoded in beauty. Every undeciphered stroke is a reminder that history isn't just about answers, it's about the thrill of the search. And somewhere in those cryptic lines, the Minoans still hold their secrets close, waiting for the day their voice returns. The alchemists' laboratories were fortresses of secrecy, where ink-stained fingers traced symbols that danced between science and sorcery. Take the Ouroboros, that serpent swallowing its tail. To the untrained eye, it might seem like a simple emblem of eternity, but for medieval alchemists, it was a carefully crafted cipher representing the cyclical nature of chemical transformation. The snake's self-devouring loop mirrored the process of distillation, where liquids were boiled, condensed, and purified in an endless loop. This wasn't just artistic flair, it was a deliberate act of obfuscation, designed to shield sacred knowledge from the uninitiated. Isaac Newton's obsession with these codes reveals just how potent they were. The man who unlocked the laws of gravity spent decades hunched over alchemical manuscripts, filling notebooks with frantic attempts to decipher their arcane language. Why? Because he believed the philosopher's stone wasn't just about turning lead into gold. It was a key to understanding the fundamental fabric of creation. His decoded notes reveal startling connections between alchemical symbols and his later work on optics and calculus. The green lion devouring the sun, for instance, wasn't mere mythology. It described the chemical reaction of nitric acid dissolving gold, a process central to purification. But the brilliance of alchemical language lay in its duality. A single symbol could operate on multiple levels: literal, allegorical, and spiritual. The rebis, a two-headed figure representing the union of opposites, wasn't just about merging sulfur and mercury. It encoded an entire philosophy, the harmony of masculine and feminine, soul and matter, even the cosmic balance Newton would later articulate in his third law. This layered meaning made alchemical texts impervious to casual readers. To grasp them, you had to think in parallels, where every chemical reaction mirrored a spiritual transformation. The question remains, why such elaborate secrecy? Some argue it was self-preservation. In an era where experimenting with metals could get you branded a heretic, encoding your work was survival. Others suggest the codes were a rite of passage. Only those willing to devote years to study could unlock their truths. But perhaps the most compelling theory is that the symbols themselves were tools of enlightenment. By forcing the mind to navigate layers of meaning, alchemists weren't just hiding knowledge, they were training their disciples to see the world differently. Today, as historians and chemists revisit these texts, they're uncovering surprising scientific rigor beneath the mysticism. The Emerald Tablet's famous maxim, "as above, so below," wasn't just poetic. It reflected an early understanding of macrocosmic and microcosmic patterns, a concept echoed in modern fractal geometry. Even the alchemist's quest for the philosopher's stone finds eerie resonance in nanotechnology, where scientists manipulate matter at the atomic level. So were these codes mere protection or vessels of deeper truth? The answer might be both. In their cryptic symbols, the alchemists built a bridge between the tangible and the transcendent, a language where every equation was also a prayer. And though their laboratories are dust, their encrypted wisdom lingers, challenging us to read between the lines of the universe itself. When the Knights Templar whispered in vaulted chambers, their words weren't just shielded by stone, they were armored in cipher. The Atbash Code, one of history's most enigmatic substitutions, transformed their communications into linguistic labyrinths. At first glance, it seems deceptively simple. Reverse the Hebrew alphabet so Aleph becomes Tav, Beth becomes Shin, and so on. But in the hands of the Templars, this wasn't just a cipher. It was a weapon of discretion. Financial records, military dispatches, even sacred oaths could vanish into plain sight, readable only to those who held the key. Consider the stakes. As Europe's first multinational bankers, the Templars moved vast fortunes across kingdoms, funding crusades and kings alike. A single intercepted letter could collapse their empire or spark accusations of heresy. The Atbash Code let them operate in the open, its brilliance lying in its dual nature. To outsiders, an encrypted parchment might look like mundane accounting. To initiates, it could reveal the location of a hidden treasury or the movements of a rival faction. Some scholars argue the code even masked their most controversial beliefs, rumors of alternative Christian doctrines, or recovered relics like the Ark of the Covenant. But here's where the mystery deepens. Fragments of Atbash appear in unexpected places, like the Damashq document, a cryptic Templar text describing celestial visions. One passage, when decoded, speaks of the pillars that hold up the sky, a phrase that echoes ancient Kabbalistic texts. Was this coincidence or evidence of a deeper esoteric tradition? Even more tantalizing are the whispers of a second cipher, a more complex system used only by the Order's highest ranks. Legends persist of a lost Templar lexicon that mapped Atbash symbols to astrological signs, turning messages into layered puzzles where financial records doubled as star charts. The Templars' downfall only amplified the enigma. When King Philip IV of France moved to destroy them in 1307, his interrogators found stacks of encrypted documents they couldn't read. Burning the Templars' archives became an act of desperation, a tacit admission that some secrets might escape even the executioner's pyre. Today, historians debate whether the few surviving Atbash fragments are red herrings or breadcrumbs to a larger truth. Did the code die with the last Grand Master, or was it passed to shadowy successors like the Freemasons? Perhaps the most enduring lesson of the Templars' cipher isn't in its mechanics, but in its philosophy. In a world where power hinged on control of information, language itself became a fortress. Every encoded word was a declaration. Knowledge, like treasure, belongs only to those willing to guard it with their lives. And somewhere in the gaps between those scrambled letters, the Templars' greatest secrets may still lie waiting, not lost, but hidden in the light. Among the vine-choked ruins of Maya cities, stone stelae stand, etched with glyphs so intricate they resemble living things, serpents coiling into syllables, jaguars morphing into numbers. This wasn't just writing, it was a sacred dance of meaning where every curve and dot held cosmic weight. The Maya script's genius lay in its duality. Some glyphs functioned as logograms representing whole words like king or star, while others were syllabic, building words sound by sound like a linguistic puzzle box. But the true power of these symbols wasn't in their structure, it was in their exclusivity. Scribes wielded them like divine keys, reserving entire glyphic vocabularies for royalty and priests, ensuring that the stories of gods and dynasties stayed locked away from common eyes. Take the Dresden Codex, one of only 4 surviving Maya books. Its pages, painted on bark paper and folded like an ancient accordion, contain astronomical tables so precise they predict Venus's movements centuries in advance. Yet interspersed with these calculations are passages that still defy translation, glyph clusters that might describe forgotten rituals or celestial prophecies. Why the secrecy? Because for the Maya, writing wasn't merely communication, it was communion. When a scribe dipped his brush in cochineal red ink to record a solar eclipse, he wasn't just noting an event. He was participating in it, his glyphs serving as conduits between the earthly and divine. The hieroglyphs' complexity made them resilient. After the Spanish conquest, missionaries burned countless codices, trying to erase indigenous knowledge. But the Maya script had already been woven into the fabric of the cosmos, literally. Glyphs adorned temple lintels aligned with solstice sunbeams, their shadows activating hidden messages at dawn. Inscriptions on ceremonial bowls reveal that even drinking chocolate had its own glyph, tied to rituals of power and privilege. Modern breakthroughs, like the decipherment of the emblem glyphs marking city-states, have peeled back layers of meaning. Yet the deeper we dig, the clearer it becomes. Some glyphs weren't meant to be read but experienced. Consider the Wayab glyph, a symbol for shamanic spirit companions often depicted as grotesque yet playful creatures. To decode it as merely spirit misses the point. These glyphs were thought to house the very entities they represented, their ink infused with breath and intention. Even today, contemporary Maya scribes in Guatemala speak of certain glyphs as cayuhol, or sacred, too potent to be written without ceremony. That's the paradox of the Maya script. The more we translate, the more we grasp how much was never meant to be spoken aloud. The Dresden Codex's untranslated passages might not be puzzles to solve, but thresholds, invitations to stand at the edge of understanding and glimpse a world where words weren't just symbols but living forces. Carved into weathered stones across Scandinavia, Norse runes seem simple at first glance, angular slashes and lines recording names or territorial claims. But look closer and you'll find whispers of something darker. Take the Björketorp runestone in Sweden, its surface scored with a message that chills even modern translators. I foresee perdition, a deceitful death to whoever breaks this monument. Was this just a Viking, no trespassing sign, or something far more potent? The answer lies in the rune's dual nature. These weren't just letters, they were conduits of Sather, the Norse concept of magic woven into the fabric of language itself. The Vikings believed runes held innate power, their shapes chiseled not just to communicate but to act. A rune for protection, alges carved onto a weapon, might deflect arrows, while Thurisaz, the thorn rune, could curse an enemy when inscribed on bark and cast into the sea. The Björketorp stone's curse follows this tradition, but with a twist. Its verses use kennings, poetic metaphors that cloak literal meaning. Deceitful death might refer to a sorcerer's trap, a spell activated by disturbing the stone. Archaeologists have found similar curse stones near burial mounds, suggesting they weren't just warnings but ritual barriers meant to bind the dead or the living. Yet runic magic wasn't always ominous. The medieval Codex Runicus manuscript, written entirely in runes, mixes land deeds with healing charms. One passage describes how to stanch bleeding by carving Tyr as the warrior rune onto oak wood while chanting. Another instructs scribes to stain runes red with ochre, a practice echoing sacrificial rites. This duality, practical and mystical, reflects the Norse worldview, where a farmer might use the same runes to mark property boundaries and invoke Odin's wisdom. The real enigma lies in runic ciphers. Some inscriptions, like the Rurk stone's 9 riddles, employ branch runes variants only decipherable by rotating or mirroring symbols. Others use twig runes where lines connect at angles to conceal messages. A mundane shopping list scratched on a bone might hide a spell beneath its surface, readable only by tilting it toward firelight. This layered approach to language suggests the Vikings didn't just fear outsiders reading their words, they feared them misusing the power within. Perhaps the most haunting evidence comes from sagas like Egil Skallagrimssonar, where a wronged poet carves runes onto a whalebone and sets it adrift, cursing a king to madness. When archaeologists unearthed a whalebone inscribed with reversed runes near Iceland's coast in 2008, the line between myth and history blurred. Were these the remains of a failed curse, or proof that runic magic lingered beyond the Viking Age? Today, as linguists debate whether certain rune rows encode lunar calendars or battle formations, one truth emerges: the Norse didn't just write their history, they enchanted it. Every stroke of the chisel was a negotiation with forces beyond human control, a gamble that words could shape fate. And somewhere in those angular glyphs, their belief still resonates. Language isn't just sound or symbol. It's a spark that can light a hearth or burn a kingdom to the ground. When Rumi wrote, "I am drunk, not from wine, but from the cup of love," he wasn't just crafting beautiful verse, he was handing his disciples a key to the divine. Sufi mystics mastered the art of Sakhen-i-Rams, or words of hidden meaning, weaving spiritual truths into poems that danced between the sensual and the sacred. To outsiders, these lines celebrated earthly pleasures, taverns, drunkenness, forbidden love. but to initiates they described states of ecstatic union with God, where wine symbolized divine intoxication and the beloved's face mirrored the infinite. This wasn't mere symbolism, it was survival. In eras when open mysticism could mean persecution, poetry became the perfect cloak, a language that revealed its secrets only to those with eyes to see. Consider the Mathnawi, Rumi's 6-volume masterpiece. Its opening tale of a reed flute's lament seems like a simple parable, yet Sufi scholars recognize it as a coded treatise on the soul's exile from the divine. The flute's hollow core represents the human heart emptied of ego, its music the cry of a seeker yearning for reunion. Even the number of verses held significance. Each of the Mathna was 25,000 couplets, allegedly corresponds to a stage on the Sufi path. The brilliance of this system lay in its fluidity. A single poem could speak to a merchant about love or a mystic about annihilation, its meaning shifting like sunlight through stained glass. But Rumi wasn't alone. Hafez's divan brims with tavern imagery that secretly mapped the stages of ascension. His wine server was code for a spiritual guide, while the ruins of the tavern hinted at the heart's emptiness before enlightenment. Persian miniatures from the Safavid era showed dervishes holding wine cups inscribed with Quranic verses, a visual pun only the initiated would grasp. This layered language wasn't just about concealment, it was a test. As the Sufi adage goes, words are a veil, only the worthy will lift them. The tradition's resilience is staggering. When Mongol armies sacked libraries, Sufi verses survived on the lips of wandering dervishes. During the Ottoman era, poets like Yunus Emre wrote in vernacular Turkish, embedding mystical concepts in folk songs that even farmers could hum, though few understood their deeper resonance. Modern scholars still debate passages in Attar's Conference of the Birds, where the journey of 30 birds through 7 valleys may encode the stages of spiritual purification or even alchemical processes. What makes Sufi poetry unique is its refusal to be pinned down. Unlike rigid ciphers, these verses shimmer with intentional ambiguity. A line like, "The moon caught me smiling at the thought of you," could describe human romance or the soul's joy at glimpsing the divine, or both simultaneously. This fluidity wasn't accidental. By demanding interpretation, the poems trained disciples to see beyond literal meaning, cultivating a mindset where every experience, no matter how mundane, could become a portal to transcendence. Today, as physicists compare Sufi descriptions of cosmic unity to quantum entanglement, and psychologists study ecstatic poetry's effects on the brain, these ancient codes take on new life. They remind us that the greatest truths often hide in plain sight, not behind locked doors, but in verses so luminous that only the prepared recognize their light. The Sufis didn't just write poetry, they engineered linguistic mirrors, knowing that when a seeker gazed deeply enough, the reflection staring back would be the face of the infinite. Hidden in the folds of embroidered handkerchiefs and stitched into the hems of wedding gowns, the delicate strokes of Nushu carried the weight of 1,000 silenced voices. This was no ordinary script, it was a secret rebellion crafted by the women of China's Zhongyong County as their only outlet in a world that denied them literacy. While men studied classical Chinese characters, generations of women developed their own linguistic sanctuary, with graceful, elongated letters resembling dancing willows or birds in flight. But don't mistake their beauty for fragility. These symbols were acts of defiance, a way to document everything from the pain of arranged marriages to the joy of female friendship in a society where women's stories were rarely deemed worth preserving. The genius of Nushu lay in its mediums. Written on delicate paper fans or woven into cloth, messages could be passed covertly. a lament about a cruel mother-in-law disguised as a decorative pattern, or a coded warning about an abusive husband hidden in a lullaby's melody. Some women even composed third-day letters, intricate embroidered texts given to brides 3 days after their weddings, containing advice and solidarity from their home villages. The script's very structure reflected female experiences. Unlike the angular rigidity of traditional Chinese characters, Nushu flowed with curves and loops, as if each stroke carried the rhythm of whispered conversations between sisters and daughters. But how did this vulnerable language survive centuries of suppression? The answer lies in its oral tradition. Nushu wasn't just written, it was sung. Women gathered in flower chambers, secluded spaces where they embroidered and chanted their writings aloud, turning private sorrows into communal art. This dual transmission made the script nearly impossible to eradicate. Even when the Japanese army burned villages during World War II, the songs endured in memory. Later, during China's Cultural Revolution, authorities destroyed countless Nushu artifacts, branding them as feudal superstition. Yet elderly women in remote mountain villages continued teaching the script to granddaughters under the guise of sewing lessons, preserving it as living memory rather than written record. The most poignant Nushu texts reveal layers of hidden meaning. A poem about planting rice might metaphorically describe a woman's resilience, while a seemingly cheerful wedding song could contain veiled warnings about marital duties. Some scholars believe certain characters encode medicinal knowledge, herbal remedies passed between mothers when formal education was forbidden. Others argue the script's phonetic flexibility allowed regional dialects to merge, creating a linguistic sisterhood across class divides. Today, less than a handful of fluent Nushu speakers remain, their knowledge now safeguarded in museums, yet the script's legacy endures in unexpected ways. Modern Chinese feminists have adopted its symbols as emblems of resistance, while linguists study its unique grammar, a system where modifiers follow nouns, echoing the way Zhongyang women saw the world differently from the men who controlled it. The last known traditional Nushu practitioner, Yang Huani, passed away in 2004, taking centuries of oral tradition with her. But in the delicate swirl of a surviving embroidery or the haunting cadence of a recorded song, you can still hear the echo of what she left behind, proof that even the most marginalized voices will always find a way to write themselves into history. High in the Andes, the Inca Empire stretched farther than Rome at its peak, yet left no written records, at least not in any form we'd recognize. Instead, they spoke through knots. The Quipu, a dazzling array of colored chords with intricate knots, wasn't just an accounting tool, it was a language suspended in space, where the thickness of a string, the twist of a fiber, or the placement of a knot could encode everything from grain stores to epic poems. While Spanish chroniclers dismissed them as primitive tally systems, modern researchers are unraveling a far more astonishing truth. These knotted chords might be one of humanity's only three-dimensional languages, a writing system that didn't just record information but embodied it. Take the Quipu, the Inca's elite record keepers. These trained specialists could run their fingers along a quipu's strands like a musician reading Braille sheet music, decoding census data or tribute payments with tactile precision. But recent discoveries suggest some quipus operated on another level entirely. A cache found in the ancient administrative center of Incahuasi revealed quipus with unusual knot clusters sequences that don't align with numerical patterns. Linguists now speculate these could represent syllables or even logograms, turning each knot into a word or concept. Imagine a history not penned on parchment but tied into existence, where a story's tension literally depended on the tightness of its knots. The colors deepen the mystery. Inca dyers used over 100 natural pigments from cochineal red to mollusk purple. In surviving quipus, certain hues appear consistently in specific positions. Turquoise chords often mark livestock counts, while crimson threads correlate with military data. This chromatic code wasn't arbitrary. Just as the Maya tied colors to cardinal directions, the Inca may have woven cosmology into their chords. A quipu recovered from a temple near Cusco alternates black and white knots in patterns mirroring the Inca calendar's sacred cycles, hinting that some chords weren't ledgers but liturgies, their knots tracking celestial events or ritual timelines. The greatest breakthrough came with comparative quipu analysis. By cross-referencing knotted patterns with Spanish colonial transcripts of Inca oral histories, researchers like Harvard's Gary Urton identified startling parallels. One quipu's knot sequences match the syllable count in a recorded legend about the creator god Viracocha, suggesting the chords preserved narratives in a format meant to be recited, not just read. This transforms our understanding of Andean memory. Rather than replacing oral tradition, quipus may have been mnemonic devices, physical prompts that helped storytellers maintain flawless accuracy across generations. Yet the full picture remains tantalizingly out of reach. The Spanish destroyed thousands of quipus during their conquest, dismissing them as idolatrous objects. Of the roughly 900 surviving examples, most date to the colonial era, their contexts lost, but hope flickers in unlikely places. In 2017, villagers in the remote Peruvian highlands uncovered a quipu buried with a mummy bundle, its knots remarkably preserved. Unlike administrative quipus, this one's chords intertwine with human hair, a visceral fusion of record-keeping and reverence that hints at untold ceremonial functions. Deciphering quipus today is like trying to reconstruct a symphony from a single measure of sheet music. We grasp the mechanics, the way knot spacing indicates quantities or how pendant chords modify meaning, but the deeper grammar eludes us. Were there dialects, could a quipu's physical structure, like the angle at which chords branch, alter its message? The answers may lie in the descendants of the Quipucamayocs. Some Andean communities still use knotted chords for local record-keeping, preserving fragments of the old techniques. Their knowledge, passed down in whispers, could be the key to unlocking the world's only language that doesn't speak in ink or stone, but in the silent poetry of twisted thread. What makes quipus extraordinary isn't just their complexity, it's their defiance of categorization. They blur the line between mathematics and metaphor, between archive and art. In a single knot, the Inca might have captured not just a number, but the texture of a memory, the color of a prayer, or the weight of a story too sacred to set free. Buried beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, upside down and brimming with coiled script, the Aramaic magic bowls whisper of a time when writing wasn't just communication, it was containment. These terracotta vessels, inscribed with spiraling incantations in Jewish Babylonian Aramaic, weren't meant to be read by the living. Their audience lurked in the shadows, demons, spirits, and malevolent forces that ancient healers sought to trap like flies in amber. The bowl's genius lay in their duality. To the untrained eye, the text might resemble ordinary prayers, but the devil, quite literally, was in the details. Phrases snaked inward in labyrinthine patterns, certain words flipped backward, and names of angels interlaced with cryptic symbols resembling writhing serpents. This wasn't careless penmanship, it was linguistic warfare designed to disorient and ensnare. The most potent bowls employed palindromic magic, where spells read identically forward and backward, creating a sort of mystical Möbius strip. A phrase like, "break the fever of Ensanavem," mirrored itself into infinity, theoretically amplifying its power with each repetition. Archaeologists have found bowls where the same incantation loops 12 times, each iteration slightly distorted, as if the scribe was tuning the spell like a musical instrument, searching for the precise resonance to shatter a curse. Some inscriptions even feature voces magicae, nonsense syllables believed to be the true names of demons, their cacophony meant to paralyze supernatural intruders. But the bowl's true innovation was their physical form. Buried upside down at thresholds or beneath home foundations, they functioned as supernatural landmines. A typical inscription might begin, "Bound and sealed are all demons, Liliths, and destroyers who approach this house." The curved interior acted as a prison, the spiraling text a binding chain. Modern linguists note how the Aramaic verb to tie appears disproportionately, often written in oversized letters, visual anchors weighing down the restless dead. What's startling is how personalized these defenses were. Excavated bowls name specific demons Hag and Mag, Abraxas, the shadow that crawls alongside their human targets. One spell from the 6th century targets a woman named Bathia, promising to repel the demon who strikes her in the womb at night. Another binds a spirit blamed for a child's seizures, its text encircling the bowl's rim like a noose. This specificity suggests the bowls weren't generic talismans, but bespoke remedies crafted by scribes who likely interviewed families about their supernatural afflictions. The most enigmatic bowls mix Aramaic with Hekkalot mysticism, referencing celestial chariots and divine thrones. A fragment from Nippur describes the archangel Metatron dictating the spell to a human scribe in a dream, blurring the line between medicine and revelation. Recent multispectral imaging has revealed hidden layers, subtext scratched beneath the glaze, possibly containing the true names of God, too sacred to expose. Why such elaborate precautions? Because in ancient Mesopotamia, words weren't just symbols, they were substances. Uttering a demon's true name could summon it. Writing that name backward might banish it. The magic bowls stand as testament to a world where language pulsed with latent energy, where every stroke of the stylus was a surgeon's suture against chaos. And though we've long stopped burying bowls beneath our doorsteps, their legacy lingers. Isn't there something eerily familiar about their logic? Today, we encrypt our data, password protect our devices, and whisper secrets into encrypted apps. The mediums have changed, but the instinct remains. Some knowledge is too dangerous to leave unguarded, too powerful to trust to the open air. Long before Rome carved its empire from the Italian peninsula, another civilization held sway, the Etruscans, whose language now lingers like a half-remembered dream. Scattered across weathered tombstones, bronze mirrors, and the enigmatic Zagreb mummy wrappings, their script taunts us with glimpses of a lost world. The letters look familiar, adapted from Greek, but the words they form remain stubbornly opaque, a linguistic jigsaw missing most of its pieces. What makes Etruscan so tantalizing isn't just its untranslated passages, but what those fragments suggest, a culture where every artifact might hold keys to forgotten gods, advanced metallurgy, or even the origins of Roman rituals themselves. Take the Thuggee tablets, gold foil inscriptions discovered near an ancient Etruscan port. One side gleams with Phoenician, a known language praising the goddess Astarte. The other shimmers with Etruscan, likely the same dedication, but with subtle differences that scholars still debate. This bilingual clue cracked open basic grammar, revealing Etruscan's unique structure. Unlike Latin or Greek, it had no distinct future tense, hinting at a world where time might have been cyclical rather than linear, but the tablet's real magic lies in their gaps. The Phoenician version mentions the year of the sacrifice, while the Etruscan side adds a mysterious phrase, Zilac Velis. Some translate this as Magistrate Velis, others as under the protection of Velis, a possible deity lost to history. Then there's the Zagreb mummy, perhaps the most haunting Etruscan text of all. When a traveler brought an Egyptian mummy to Croatia in the 19th century, no one noticed the linen wrappings were covered in Etruscan script until decades later. This Liber Linteus is the longest Etruscan document ever found, 1,200 words painstakingly unraveled from the cloth, yet its contents remain elusive. The text appears ritualistic, packed with dates and deity names, possibly a liturgical calendar. One recurring sequence, Keltine Sit, might mean on the third day, suggesting ceremonies tied to celestial events. But without more context, it's like hearing a symphony through a keyhole. You catch the melody, but the harmonies slip away. The Etruscans' influence on Rome only deepens the mystery. Roman historians admitted they borrowed augury, the art of reading bird flights, from Etruscan priests called haruspices. Etruscan tombs depict elaborate liver divination, where priests studied animal organs like cosmic maps. A bronze model of a sheep's liver found in Piacenza is inscribed with 40 divine names, each marking a zone of the sky. This implies the Etruscans didn't just predict the future, they might have mapped the heavens in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Why does this matter? Because every untranslated Etruscan word could rewrite history. Their language holds no kinship with Latin or Greek, suggesting origins far older, perhaps tracing back to the enigmatic Villanovan culture or even Anatolia. A single phrase might confirm if they really taught the Romans everything from hydraulics to gladiatorial games. And then there's the eerie coincidence. The Etruscan word for god, eyes, echoes in the name of Rome's founder, Ingenious. Was he, like so much else, an Etruscan legacy repurposed for Roman myth? The cruelest twist is how close we've come. Modern algorithms can analyze the script's patterns, matching known words like clan son or sect daughter across inscriptions. But without a Rosetta Stone, a lengthy bilingual text, the soul of the language stays locked away. Maybe that's fitting. The Etruscans, who excelled at binding spells and divination, would appreciate the irony. Their words, meant to last eternity, now guard their secrets as fiercely as any magic. And so we're left with whispers, names of goddesses like Tiran, their love deity, or Uni, a mother figure, waiting for the day their stories wake again. The Basque language stands alone, a linguistic island in the sea of Indo-European tongues that dominate Europe, while French, Spanish, and English trace their roots to a common ancestral language. Basque shares no kinship with any known family. Its origins are so ancient that some linguists believe it predates the arrival of farming in Europe, surviving like a fossilized echo of a lost world. But here's the mystery. Why did this singular language endure when every other pre-Indo-European tongue vanished? The answer might lie not in geography, but in secrecy. Whispers persist that Basque was the sacred language of Europe's forgotten pagan cults groups, who retreated into the Pyrenees to preserve their traditions as Christianity spread. The language's structure supports this theory. Basque verbs conjugate in ways that seem almost mathematical, with suffixes stacking like layers of meaning. A single verb can indicate not just tense and subject, but whether the speaker witnessed the action firsthand or heard it secondhand. This nuance suggests a culture deeply concerned with truth and perception, perhaps reflecting shamanic practices where distinguishing vision from illusion was vital. Even the word for sun, Egazki, has no clear etymology, leading some to speculate it encodes an ancient solar deity's name, erased by time. Then there's Basque's counting system, which operates on base 20, a rarity among world languages. The number 40 is expressed as barojai, literally 2 20s, echoing systems used by the Celts and Maya. Could this hint at a shared cosmological framework, where numbers weren't just quantities but keys to understanding cycles of time or celestial patterns. The Basque calendar, with its emphasis on solstice markers and lunar phases, adds weight to the idea. Even the language's spatial terms are peculiar. Directions are often given in relation to mountain peaks or rivers, as if the landscape itself was a sacred text. But the most tantalizing clues lie in Basque's oral traditions. Bertsolaritza, the art of improvised poetic dueling, follows strict metrical rules that researchers believe may preserve archaic phrasing. In these verses, certain rhymes and alliterations only work when pronounced in reconstructed ancient Basque, suggesting the modern language is a palimpsest, its surface hiding older layers. One chant recorded in the 19th century mentions Gentilak, a race of giants said to have built stone circles while speaking in the first tongue. Could this be a folk memory of the language's original speakers? The enigma deepens with the discovery of Bronze Age Iberian inscriptions that share peculiar symbols with Basque. While the scripts remain untranslated, their glyphs resemble later Basque heraldic marks, hinting at an unbroken symbolic tradition. Even the famous Aquitanian names from Roman-era Gaul, like Hieroglyphs, show clear Basque roots, proving the language's reach once extended far beyond its modern borders. What makes Basque extraordinary isn't just its isolation. It's the possibility that its grammar, vocabulary, and rhythms safeguard a world you obliterated elsewhere. When a Basque speaker says "Harry" for stone, they might be invoking more than a rock. They could be echoing a Neolithic reverence for standing stones, or a belief that language itself was hewn from the earth. In a world where so many ancient codes were deliberately hidden, Basque may be the rare key that survived not by concealment, but by sheer stubbornness, a living cipher waiting for the right moment to speak its secrets. Deep in the vaults of medieval monasteries, scribes guarded copies of texts so enigmatic that even their authorship was a riddle attributed not to a mortal man, but to the legendary Hermes Trismegistus, a mythical fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth. These Hermetic writings, composed between the 1st and 3rd centuries, weren't just philosophical treatises. They were linguistic labyrinths where every allegory hid another, and the simplest phrase might unfold like a celestial map. Take the famous Emerald Tablet, its opening line, "As above, so below," a deceptively simple mantra that Renaissance alchemists spent lifetimes unpacking. Was it a metaphor for cosmic harmony, a recipe for spiritual transformation, or, as some modern theorists suggest, an early intuition of fractal geometry, where patterns repeat across scales? The text's power lay in their deliberate obscurity. A passage about the sun's golden blood might describe the alchemical process of dissolving gold in aqua regia, while simultaneously encoding a spiritual truth about divine energy animating matter. This wasn't accidental ambiguity, it was engineered. Hermetic initiates believed profound knowledge could only be transmitted to those prepared to receive it, so they armored their wisdom in layers of symbolism. The Corpus Hermeticum, a foundational collection of dialogues, presents conversations between Hermes and his disciples where even the punctuation seems charged with meaning. Commas appear in unusual sequences, breaking sentences rhythmically, as if to force the reader into contemplative pauses. Renaissance scholars like Marsilio Ficino, who translated these texts in the 15th century, were convinced they held the keys to ancient Egyptian wisdom. But modern linguists suspect they missed crucial layers. Ficino's translations often smoothed over odd grammatical structures, unaware that the original Greek's erratic syntax might have been intentional, a way to jolt readers out of linear thinking. For example, one passage in the Asclepius abruptly shifts from third-person narration to first-person, divine revelation without warning. a stylistic quirk most early translators dismissed as sloppy writing. Yet recent analyses suggest these shifts could mark transitions between exoteric public and esoteric hidden teachings, like a literary trapdoor. The most tantalizing puzzles emerge in the Stobaeus fragments, Hermetic texts preserved by a 5th century anthologist. Here, celestial mechanics are described using verbs typically reserved for biological processes. The moon gestates its light. The zodiac digests the stars. This wasn't poetic license. It reflected a Hermetic worldview where the universe was alive, its components interconnected like organs in a body. When Renaissance magus Giordano Bruno borrowed this language in his cosmic theories, he was burned at the stake not just for heresy, but for daring to revive a perspective that threatened the mechanistic worldview taking hold in Europe. What makes the Hermetic texts endure isn't just their mystery, it's their uncanny resonance with modern ideas. The Hermetic concept of sympathy, where distant objects influence each other through invisible bonds, mirrors quantum entanglement. Their insistence that observation alters reality anticipates the observer effect in physics. Even their instructional methods feel contemporary. Many dialogues employ Socratic questioning, forcing the student to experience realization rather than passively receive information. Yet the greatest secret might lie in what wasn't written. Hermetic tradition insists the most potent knowledge was never inscribed, only passed orally to prevent distortion. The texts we have, then, might be mere shadows training wheels for minds not yet ready to ride the cosmic currents. As the Kybalion, a later Hermetic work, warns, the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. And so the puzzle remains. Did we lose the key to these texts, or were they designed to forever hover just beyond our grasp, revealing only as much as each era is prepared to comprehend? High on the Bandiagara escarpment in Mali, where the cliffs glow copper under the Saharan sun, the Dogon people speak of celestial secrets that defy explanation. Their oral traditions describe Sirius not as a single star, but as part of a trinity, a claim that sent shockwaves through the scientific community when astronomers confirmed Sirius B's existence in the 19th century. This dense white dwarf, invisible without telescopes, had been known to the Dogon for centuries under the name Po-Tolo, the smallest seed star. But how? The answer might lie in the Dogon language itself, where words aren't just labels, they're vessels for cosmic memory, encoding astronomical precision in everyday speech. Consider their description of Sirius B's elliptical orbit. The Dogon say Po-Tolo spins around Sirius every 50 years, a figure remarkably close to modern calculations of 50.1 years. Even more startling, their word for Sirius A, Sigitolo, incorporates the root Sigwi, meaning ceremony, a nod to the grand festival they hold every 60 years, a cycle that some scholars speculate might mirror Sirius B's movement. This isn't casual stargazing, it's a linguistic blueprint of the heavens passed down through generations in myths and ritual chants, yet controversy simmers. Skeptics argue that the Dogon could have absorbed this knowledge from European visitors in the early 20th century, but the linguistic evidence complicates that theory. The Dogon's precise terms for Sirius B's density, the heaviest thing there is, and its composition, white like a fonio grain, echo astrophysical truths about white dwarfs, details unlikely to emerge from casual contact. Their word for creation, soy, also means to spin, mirroring their belief that the universe formed from a spiraling vortex, a concept eerily reminiscent of modern accretion disk theories. The deeper mystery lies in the Dogon's Awa society, where initiates learn an esoteric lexicon said to derive from amphibious beings called Nomo, who descended from Sirius. These advanced terms include words for quantum concepts like wave-particle duality, expressed metaphorically through weaving patterns, the thread that is both rope and light. Modern linguists note that Dogon astronomical vocabulary shares roots with ancient Egyptian terms for Sirius, hinting at a possible lost thread of African cosmological knowledge. What if the Dogon language isn't just describing the stars, but preserving a forgotten way of seeing them? Their word for knowledge, Jiri So, translates literally as to swallow the star, a visceral metaphor for internalizing cosmic truths. In a world where telescopes and algorithms map the skies, the Dogon remind us that language itself can be an observatory, its syllables tracing orbits long before lenses could capture them. Whether their wisdom springs from ancestral vision or interstellar contact, one thing is clear. When a Dogon elder points to Sirius and speaks, the universe answers in a tongue we're only beginning to understand. Bishop Wulfila faced an impossible choice. How do you translate Holy Scripture for a people whose language has never been written? In the 4th century, as Gothic tribes clashed with Rome, this missionary crafted an entire alphabet to bring the Bible to the warlike Visigoths. But hidden within his painstaking translation, scholars now whisper of a dangerous secret. Wulfila, an adherent of the Arian heresy, might have woven his unorthodox beliefs into the very fabric of Gothic scripture, creating a coded theological rebellion that would outlast empires. The Gothic Bible's survival is a miracle itself. Fragments of this 6th century manuscript, written in silver ink on purple vellum, escaped the flames of orthodoxy that sought to erase Arianism from history. At first glance, it appears faithful, the Lord's Prayer, Psalms, Gospels, but linguistic forensic work reveals subtle divergences, where Greek texts call Christ homoousios, of the same substance as God. Wulfila's Gothic uses galax, meaning like or similar. This wasn't semantics, it was the crux of the Arian controversy, which claimed Christ was created by and therefore subordinate to God the Father. By choosing this term, Wulfila may have smuggled heresy into the mouths of Gothic converts, ensuring their worship aligned with banned doctrines even as the Council of Nicaea condemned them. The clues multiply in Wulfila's neologisms. For Trinity, he avoided the traditional Greek trias, instead coining triga, a word implying 3 separate entities rather than one united essence. Even his alphabet whispers of dissent. The Gothic letter H, where, shaped like a chalice, resembles early Christian symbols for the Arian cup of separation, representing Christ's distinct nature from God. Was this visual heresy hiding in plain sight? Yet the greatest mystery lies in what's missing. Wulfila reportedly refused to translate Kings, fearing its war stories would inflame Gothic militarism. But some scholars suspect another reason. The book's emphasis on Solomon's wisdom might contradict Arian views of Christ's limited divinity. Instead, he emphasized Paul's letters, where ambiguous phrases could be rendered to support his theology. Romans 9:5, calling Christ God over all, becomes Guth Eupha Alaim in Gothic, a phrase some argue softens the divine claim. The Gothic Bible's legacy is a paradox. It gave the Germanic world its first literature, yet may have been designed to undermine the very church that commissioned it. When Visigothic kings converted to Catholicism in the 6th century, they burned Arian texts, but the language itself resisted eradication. Fragments survived in monasteries, their heresies dormant until 19th century linguists revived them. Today, as scholars debate whether Wulfila was a translator or a theological saboteur, one truth emerges: words are never neutral. Especially when they're whispered in a language only the faithful can read. In the candlelit scriptorium of a Rhineland abbey, a Benedictine nun dipped her quill into ink and began writing words that no human had ever spoken. Hildegard von Bingen's Lingua Ignota, literally unknown language, wasn't just a scholarly exercise. This 12th century mystic, already famed for her divine visions and musical compositions, crafted an entire linguistic universe, 23 unique letters forming nearly 1,000 words, each meticulously recorded in her manuscript Ignota Lingua per Simplicem Hominum. But why, to modern eyes, her invention seems almost surreal, a vocabulary where agons means God, zuens translates to prophet, and chrysia signifies church, all structured with grammatical rules yet utterly disconnected from any known tongue. Some scholars argue Hildegard's language was a sacred cipher designed to capture the ineffable, those divine revelations that slipped through the cracks of Latin. Her glossary groups words hierarchically, celestial beings first, then earthly institutions, finally human conditions. This wasn't random. It mirrored her vision of creation as a great chain of being, with language itself as a ladder between heaven and earth. The very act of naming for Hildegard was an act of power. When she coined Leufol for people or Zizens for sun, she might have been reconstructing the primal language Adam spoke before Babel's fall, a tongue untainted by human corruption. Yet the Lingua Ignota has darker undercurrents. Interspersed among her heavenly terms are words for torture, Xanacton, hell, diabol, and sin, mouths. This wasn't just a lexicon of light, it was a map of spiritual warfare. Hildegard's letters describe her visions of a living fire that infused her with understanding, leading some to speculate the language was a protective charm, a way to encode dangerous mystical knowledge from demonic interference. The alphabet symbols, with their looping curves and sharp angles, resemble medieval sigils used to bind spirits. The greatest enigma lies in the language's practicality, or lack thereof. Unlike constructed languages meant for communication, Hildegard's has no verbs for mundane actions like eat or walk. Instead, it brims with terms for virtues, vanix, justice, liturgical objects, auses, altar, and celestial harmonies, seance, music of the spheres. This suggests it wasn't meant for daily use but for a higher purpose, perhaps singing hidden hymns, recording forbidden visions, or even serving as a bridge for prayer too pure for mortal speech. Modern linguists have tried to crack its patterns. Some note similarities to Germanic word structures, while others detect traces of Hebrew mysticism in its tripartite roots. A few daring theorists propose it wasn't invented at all, that Hildegard received it during ecstatic trances, transcribing a language spoken by angels, or the divine Viridita's greenness she believed permeated creation. This would explain why certain words, like eagants for angel, contain phonemes rare in human languages but common in glossolalia, the speaking in tongues of mystical experience. What remains haunting is how little we still understand. Hildegard left no grammar guide, no Rosetta Stone, only her cryptic notation, per simplicem hominum, for the simple person. Was this humility or a clue that the language's true key lies not in complexity, but in childlike faith? As her abbey's walls echoed with chants she composed, perhaps the Lingua Ignota was never meant to be fully decoded. Like her visions of spinning wheels of fire and jeweled mountains, it exists at the edge of understanding, a reminder that some truths resist translation, and the most sacred words are those we feel but cannot speak. High in the mist-shrouded mountains of Yunnan, where the Himalayas fold into China, the Naxi people have safeguarded a secret for centuries, not in words but in living pictures. Their Dongba script, a vibrant tapestry of pictographs, defies everything we assume about writing. These aren't mere symbols, they're frozen moments of sacred theater, where a single brushstroke can capture the curl of a dragon's tail, the bend of a shaman's knee in prayer, or the cosmic egg from which the world hatched. Unlike the rigid alphabets we know, Dongba breathes with the fluidity of memory, turning creation myths into something you don't just read, you witness. Take the creation epic, a sprawling narrative painted across hand scrolls. Here, the universe begins not with a bang, but with a slow unfurling. A frog-headed deity cradles the first light, while serpents coil around mountains still soft as clay. The pictographs don't just describe these beings, they become them. A depiction of the wind isn't a static symbol. It's a cascade of lines that seem to ripple if you stare long enough. This is language as performance art, where every stroke preserves not just meaning but movement. Shamans, called Dongbas, don't merely recite these stories, they animate them, tracing the pictographs with ritual staffs as if summoning the scenes to life. What's astonishing is how much these images convey without a single abstract character. Where alphabets reduce ideas to arbitrary shapes, Dongba insists on visceral immediacy. The pictograph for love shows two figures sharing a bowl of rice. Conflict is a pair of locked horns. Even complex concepts like afterlife are rendered with startling clarity. A bridge of spider silk stretching between worlds, so delicate only the virtuous can cross. This visual language isn't primitive. It's profound, compressing layers of theology and morality into glimpses even the illiterate could grasp. But the true genius lies in the gaps. Unlike linear texts, Dongba scrolls invite interpretation. A shaman might linger on one image for hours, unpacking hidden teachings while skimming another in seconds. Some scholars believe the spacing between pictographs encodes ritual timing, the pause between drum beats or the space between breaths in meditation. The Rokyu ceremony scrolls, used to guide souls through the afterlife, are particularly enigmatic. Certain scenes appear inverted or mirrored, possibly reflecting the Naxi belief that the spirit world operates in reverse. A tree's roots might sprawl upward, not to confuse but to signal, here the rules dissolve. The Naxi's insistence on orality adds another layer. Dongba texts are mnemonics, not standalone records. A scroll's painted tiger might remind the shaman to roar the verses of a hunting hymn, while a dancing figure cues a specific chant's rhythm. This interdependence of image and voice makes Dongba script alive in a way no dictionary could capture. When the last fluent Dongbas pass, their scrolls won't just lose translators, they'll lose their soundtrack, their pulse. Modern attempts to digitize Dongba risk flattening its magic. A scanned pictograph of a flaming arrow might preserve its outlines, but not the way a shaman's trembling finger follows its path, or how the soot from the ritual hearth smudges the paper over decades of use. Yet there's hope. Young Naxi artists are reinventing the tradition, blending pictographs with street art and animation, not to fossilize the past, but to let it keep evolving. After all, Dongba was never meant to be locked behind glass. It's a language that demands to be lived, one brushstroke, one chant, one retelling at a time. So what stories can these images tell that texts cannot? Perhaps the answer lies in their very form. Where paragraphs dissect, Dongba unfolds. Where words explain, pictographs invite. They remind us that some truths aren't meant to be pinned down with grammar. They're meant to be felt in the gut, traced by firelight, and carried forward not in ink, but in the shaman's sway and the listener's held breath. In a world drowning in text, the Naxi offer a radical alternative. Sometimes the deepest wisdom wears no words at all. Beneath the flickering candlelight of 18th century Masonic lodges, a secret language unfolded not in whispers, but in handshakes, symbols, and the cryptic angles of a draftsman's compass. The Freemasons' famed pigpen cipher, with its tic-tac-toe grids and dotted letters, might seem like child's play today. But in an era when fraternal loyalty could mean the difference between political influence and persecution, their codes were deadly serious. A single misplaced symbol or botched hand grip could expose an entire network. Yet the true genius of Masonic communication wasn't just in concealment, it was in layering. Every cipher held not just a message, but a mirror reflecting deeper philosophical truths to those prepared to look beyond the surface. Take their architectural symbolism. To outsiders, the compass and square might signify a stonemason's tools, but initiates understood these as allegories for balancing the spiritual and material, the compass drawing celestial circles, the square grounding them in earthly virtue. Even the pigpen cipher's design whispers of hidden dimensions. Its 9-grid structure echoes the Masonic 3x3 principle, a sacred geometry representing Enlightenment stages. When Benjamin Franklin, a known Freemason, used a variant in his private correspondence, was he encoding sensitive political deals or practicing the fraternity's core tenet? That wisdom must be earned through patient decoding. The lodge's most tantalizing secrets, however, may lie in their rituals. The 5 points of fellowship, a series of grips and stances used to identify members, weren't just passwords. They physically enacted the fraternity's ethical code: foot-to-foot readiness to aid, knee-to-knee prayerful counsel, heart-to-heart sincere bonds, hand-to-back support in adversity, and mouth-to-ear guarded speech. This wasn't theater, it was embodied philosophy, turning the body itself into a living cipher. Modern scholars still debate whether these rituals descended from medieval stonemason guilds or borrowed from older mystery schools, but their endurance hints at something beyond mere tradition. Then there's the question of what wasn't written. Masonic libraries brim with manuscripts that reference lost inner degrees or oral teachings. The notorious cipher manuscripts of the 19th century Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, for instance, contain Masonic symbols alongside alchemical formulae, suggesting cross-pollination between esoteric traditions. Even Mozart, a devoted Freemason, wove Masonic ciphers into the magic flute. The number 3, sacred in Masonry, structures everything from chords to plot points, while the trials of fire and water mirror initiation rites. Yet the most compelling evidence of concealed knowledge might be the Mason's own adaptability. When anti-Masonic hysteria swept America in the 1820s, lodges didn't just hide, they evolved. Symbols grew more abstract, handshakes more nuanced. Some historians argue this wasn't just survival tactics, but a return to roots. Freemasonry had always thrived in ambiguity, its true power lying not in fixed doctrines, but in the act of seeking. So how much remains hidden? The answer might defy expectations. In an age where Masonic halls host public tours and their once secret signs adorn jewelry, the fraternity's greatest secret could be that there is no final cipher, only an endless invitation to look deeper. The symbols endure not because they guard answers, but because they keep asking the oldest question of all. What if the real treasure isn't the truth you find, but the person you become in its pursuit? Among the most haunting linguistic mysteries on Earth, the Rongorongo glyphs of Easter Island stare back at us like silent witnesses to a forgotten epic. Carved into weathered wooden tablets with shark teeth or obsidian flakes, these intricate symbols, human figures, birds, celestial shapes, flow in alternating lines that reverse direction like a plow turning soil. Discovered in the 19th century by European missionaries, these tablets were nearly wiped out in their zeal to eradicate pagan artifacts. Only 26 survive today, each one a tantalizing fragment of what might have been a vast written tradition. But here's what chills the bones. Rongorongo isn't just undeciphered. It's the only known indigenous writing system to emerge independently in Oceania, a fact that rewrites everything we thought we knew about Polynesian intellectual history. The glyph's possible connection to the island's iconic moai statues spins the mystery deeper. Some researchers note recurring symbols resembling the statue's pucao topknots and elongated ears, while others spot glyphs that might depict the sacred birdman competition central to Rapa Nui culture. But the most provocative theory comes from linguists who have identified a possible calendrical pattern. Certain glyph clusters repeat at intervals that align with lunar cycles or the arrival of sooty turns, clues that Rongorongo could be less a historical record and more a liturgical text, encoding rituals tied to the island's ecological rhythms. Imagine the implications. If deciphered, these tablets might reveal how the Rapa Nui people tracked time, predicted migrations, or even coordinated the transport of those massive moai across the island. Yet Rongorongo resists translation with almost defiant elegance. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Maya script, there's no bilingual key, no Rosetta Stone. The oral traditions that might have explained it were severed when slave raids and disease decimated the island's elders in the 1860s. Modern attempts to crack the code hit a unique barrier: Rongorongo's reverse Boustrophedon writing style, where every other line flips upside down, suggests it wasn't meant to be read but performed. Ethnographic accounts describe Rapa Nui experts chanting while tracing the glyphs with their fingers, implying the tablets were mnemonic aids for recitation, not standalone texts. This would make Rongorongo a bridge between writing and oratory, where meaning lived in the interplay of symbol, voice, and gesture. The tragedy of the tablet's destruction adds layers of urgency. Missionary accounts mention burning hundreds of inscribed wooden objects, dismissing them as demonic. But one surviving fragment, now in Rome's Vatican library, hints at what was lost. Known as the Mamre Tablet, it bears a section nicknamed the Rapa Nui Zodiac, a sequence of glyphs that may map stars crucial for navigation. If proven, this could mean Rongorongo preserved not just myths, but the very knowledge that enabled Polynesians to conquer the Pacific. What lingers most isn't just the mystery of the glyphs themselves, but what their existence implies. Easter Island was isolated, its resources scarce, yet its people developed a writing system without outside influence. Was Rongorongo a desperate act of cultural preservation as deforestation collapsed their society, or a triumphant intellectual leap in the face of adversity? The tablets won't say, not yet, but every stroke of those shark-tooth carvings whispers the same humbling truth. Some stories refuse to be silenced, even when their words are lost to time. In the candlelit scriptoria of medieval Armenia, where monks bent over parchment like scribes of the divine, a secret script emerged, one where ink strokes might hum with hidden melodies. The cryptohe alphabet, with its swooping curves and delicate flourishes, wasn't just a tool for encryption. To the untrained eye, its symbols resemble musical notation neumes dancing across the page like notes waiting to be sung. But this was no accidental beauty. When Armenian theologians debated sacred mysteries too volatile for open discourse, they turned to cryptohe, weaving their arguments into a script that blurred the line between writing and chant. What makes cryptohe extraordinary is its duality. Some letters mirror Armenian ecclesiastical musical symbols, suggesting the script could be performed rather than merely read. A single glyph might represent both a theological concept and a specific pitch, transforming debates about the nature of Christ into harmonic progressions. Imagine a monk tracing a cryptohe passage with one hand while his other shaped the air, conducting an invisible choir of ideas. The script's flowing lines even mimic the characans, Armenia's haunting liturgical hymns, where doctrine was often encoded in metaphor and meter. Was cryptohe designed to be sung in whispers, its true meaning emerging only when voiced aloud in sacred spaces? the encryption goes deeper. Certain letters appear to shift function based on their position, like musical notes altering meaning within a scale. A symbol resembling a treble clef might denote the Trinity in one context, but when inverted, reference the dual nature of Christ, a theological minefield in medieval Christianity. This adaptability made cryptohe formidable. Unlike rigid ciphers, it could layer meanings like polyphony, allowing monks to safeguard heterodox ideas from Byzantine or Islamic authorities. A passage about light might superficially discuss candle making while secretly debating divine illumination, the truth vibrating between the lines like a held chord. Yet the greatest enigma lies in the script silences. Modern scholars have identified gaps in surviving cryptohe texts, blank spaces where parchment shows signs of erased or never completed symbols. Some believe these were intentional, akin to musical rests, creating rhythmic pauses that heighten the revealed text's impact. Others speculate the missing glyphs were keys, known only to initiates, without which the remaining letters would never resolve into coherence. It's a tantalizing parallel to Armenian mystical traditions, where the unspeakable was often represented by voids or empty frames. The few deciphered fragments only deepen the mystery. One recovered page from a 10th century monastery near Lake Van contains a cryptohe hymn to the Virgin Mary. When linguists mapped its symbols to medieval Armenian musical modes, they discovered the glyphs' angles correspond to intervals in the Zangak scale, a melodic system believed to induce spiritual ecstasy. Was this mere artistry or proof that cryptohe was engineered to affect its readers, vibrating through their bodies like chant? Today, as musicologists and cryptographers collaborate to crack cryptohe's codes, they face a paradox. The script resists digital analysis because its meaning may not live in static symbols, but in the movement between them, the glide of a quill, the breath between syllables. Like the Armenian liturgy itself, where truth was held in the space between voice and silence, cryptohe reminds us that some languages aren't meant to be solved but sounded. And somewhere in those ancient pages, a harmony waits not just of notes, but of minds reaching across centuries, singing truths too dangerous to speak aloud. During the fevered witch trials of 16th century Europe, a curious pattern emerged in confessions extracted under torture, accused women speaking in tongues no scholar could decipher. Trial records from Scotland to Switzerland describe fairy languages bubbling from the lips of so-called witches, their words flipping Latin phrases backward or twisting nursery rhymes into eerie chants. Was this mere delirium or something far more deliberate? The spells recorded in these documents reveal a chilling possibility that persecuted women crafted linguistic shields, not just to protect forbidden knowledge, but to weaponize language itself against their accusers. Take the case of Isabel Gowdy, a Scottish woman whose 1,662 confession still baffles linguists. She claimed to speak the language of the elves, reciting phrases like horse and hattock in the name of the devil. A jumble of equestrian terms and blasphemy that prosecutors frantically transcribed. Modern analysis suggests these weren't random syllables. Hattock derives from hetok, an old Scots word for a hobgoblin, while her inverted Latin phrases esritaf 8 for fathers the mirror ancient Celtic charm traditions where backward speech warded off evil. This wasn't gibberish, it was linguistic jujitsu, turning the church's own Latin against it while invoking older, earthier spirits, yet some witch codes hint at deeper roots. In the Basque country, accused healers like Maria de Zimmeldegui used Sorgen Hiskansa, which language containing words like acabelts, black goat, that scholars now link to pre-Christian deity names. A 17th-century French grimoire seized from a midwife includes symbols resembling Bronze Age petroglyphs found near healing springs. These fragments suggest that beneath the persecutors' caricatures of devil worship, real strands of pagan survival pulsed not as organized religion, but as folk memory encoded in rhyme and ritual. The most haunting evidence lies in how these languages functioned. In Venetian trial records, accused which Laura Malapiro insisted her linguaggio del strec could bind the moon's blood, a phrase later found in an excavated Roman-era amulet for menstrual cramps. Similarly, English cunning women's charms often embedded Old English healing formulae within seeming nonsense, like the trochila spells that disguised herbal knowledge as nursery rhymes. This wasn't just secrecy, it was subterfuge, ensuring vital wisdom survived even if the wielder burned. What makes these ciphers extraordinary is their duality. To inquisitors, they proved satanic pacts. To the women who wielded them, they may have been lifelines, a way to preserve birth knowledge, land rights, or resistance songs under the guise of madness. Like the Norse rune masters who carved curses in cipher, or the enslaved Africans who wove Yoruba into Christian hymns, accused witches turned language into both armor and artifact. Their fairy tongues whisper across the centuries a defiant truth. When the powerful control the narrative, the oppressed will always invent new ways to speak. Buried beneath the dry soil of modern Pakistan and India, the Indus Valley civilization left behind one of history's most tantalizing linguistic puzzles, a script of over 4,000 symbols etched into seals, pottery, and copper tablets, yet silent for millennia. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, which eventually yielded their secrets, this Bronze Age writing system refuses to speak. The seals depict vivid scenes, unicorn-like creatures, meditating figures, even what might be the earliest known yoga poses, but the symbols accompanying them remain stubbornly opaque. Some researchers argue these markings encode an ancient Dravidian language, possibly related to modern Tamil. Others contend they're not language at all, but a complex system of clan symbols or even a prehistoric emoji set. The debate isn't just academic, it's a battle over whether we're staring at the world's oldest undeciphered poetry or something far stranger. What makes the script so maddening is its brevity. Most inscriptions are shockingly short, averaging just 5 symbols with none exceeding 26. This scarcity of data cripples statistical analysis, the very tool that cracked other ancient codes. The symbols themselves range from elegant pictographs, fish, jars, stick figures, to abstract geometric shapes, zigzags, grids, ladders, arranged in sequences that defy obvious patterns. Some scholars, like Asko Parpola, have spent decades hunting for clues in the symbol's recurrence, noting that the fish sign appears frequently alongside what might be numerals, suggesting trade records. But without a bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone, every theory remains suspended in uncertainty. The stakes are higher than they seem. If the script is linguistic, it could rewrite the history of writing itself. The Indus Valley flourished around 2600 BC, contemporary with early Sumerian cuneiform. Decipherment might reveal whether writing arose independently in South Asia or spread through trade. But the non-linguistic camp, led by researchers like Steve Farmer, points to the symbol's rigid consistency across centuries as evidence of a non-verbal system, perhaps akin to medieval heraldry or modern barcodes, conveying ownership or ritual status rather than prose. Recent breakthroughs add fuel to the fire. Computer-assisted studies have identified potential grammatical structures, with certain symbols appearing only at the beginnings or ends of sequences, a hallmark of syntactic rules. Even more compelling, statistical analysis by Rajesh Rao's team revealed the script's entropy, a measure of randomness, falls between known languages and symbolic systems, leaving room for both interpretations. Some symbols even appear to change meaning based on position, like the jar sign that might denote a commodity when paired with numerals but represent a deity in ritual contexts. The most haunting possibility, we might be missing the key because we're looking in the wrong medium. Over 90% of surviving inscriptions are on durable materials like stone and metal, but the civilization's widespread use of perishable materials, wood, cloth, palm leaves, hints that longer texts could have vanished. Imagine an entire literature rotted away in the monsoon rains, leaving behind only these cryptic commercial tags. As archaeologists unearth new sites and AI algorithms parse symbol frequencies, the script's silence grows louder. It whispers of a sophistication we can't quite grasp, a civilization that built grid-planned cities with sewage systems millennia before Rome, yet left no deciphered chronicles of its triumphs or tragedies. Every undeciphered stroke is a mirror, reflecting not just our curiosity, but our limits, until the day some lucky excavator stumbles upon a clay tablet with both Indus symbols and a known script. These voices from humanity's dawn will keep their secrets, reminding us that history's most profound conversations sometimes happen in languages we've forgotten how to hear. The legacy of these lost languages stretches far beyond their cryptic symbols and coded messages. They were lifelines, pulsing with the desperate ingenuity of cultures fighting to survive. Consider the fate of the Cherokee syllabary created by Sequoyah in the early 19th century, at a time when the U.S. government sought to forcibly assimilate indigenous nations. This writing system became an act of defiance. Within years, Cherokee literacy rates surpassed those of European settlers, enabling the tribe to print newspapers, codify laws, and document medicinal knowledge that might otherwise have vanished on the Trail of Tears. Yet even this triumph carried a cruel twist. The very newspapers written in Sequoyah's script were later used by federal agents to identify and target Cherokee leaders during forced removals. Language here wasn't just a shield, it was a double-edged sword, both preserving and exposing the people who wielded it. Halfway across the world, the Ogam Script of Cameroon tells a similar story of resistance. King Enjoya of the Ogam Kingdom developed this intricate writing system in the 1890s as German colonizers encroached on his lands. But his genius lay in adaptability. When missionaries arrived, he secretly incorporated their Latin letters into the script, creating a hybrid system that let his people appear compliant while safeguarding sacred traditions in the original glyphs. Today, scholars pore over Ogam manuscripts filled with veiled critiques of colonialism, their true meanings hidden in the graceful curves of symbols that mimic royal regalia or the horns of ancestral bulls. These weren't just letters, they were cultural landmines primed to detonate with meaning when the time was right. The urgency to decode these systems now borders on the apocalyptic. In Australia, the last fluent speaker of the Yagan language passed in 2019, taking with him untold stories encoded in a tongue that once mapped the coastline through intricate directional suffixes. Meanwhile, the Amazon's Tembe people are racing to digitize their pictographic, writing in the clouds system before loggers and wildfires erase both their forests and the elders who can interpret them. What dies with these languages isn't just vocabulary, it's entire ways of perceiving reality. The Tayuka language of the Amazon, for instance, requires speakers to specify how they know something seen, heard, or inferred, embedding epistemological precision into everyday speech. Lose that, and we lose a blueprint for human cognition itself. Modern technology offers glimmers of hope. AI-powered pattern recognition has breathed new life into the decipherment of linear A, while 3D imaging reveals faded ink on medieval palimpsests where Christian monks overwrote forbidden pagan texts. Yet the real breakthrough might come from an unexpected source, the descendants of these language creators. In Hawaii, a revival of the once banned Alilo Hawaii has seen immersion schools and even a university program resurrect not just words, but the ancestral knowledge they carried, like the lunar calendar that guided sustainable fishing for generations. Similarly, the Wampanoag tribe reclaimed their language in the 1990s using a single surviving Bible translation, transforming it from a tool of colonization back into a vessel for cultural rebirth. What awaits us if we succeed in unlocking these linguistic vaults? The answers might reshape history. Decoded Mayan glyphs already forced scholars to abandon the myth of the peaceful Maya, revealing dynasties as warlike as Rome. A fully translated Indus Valley script could rewrite the origins of urbanization, while the whispered, witch languages of early modern Europe might expose erased feminine cosmologies. But perhaps the greatest lesson lies in the codes themselves. Their creators understood something we've forgotten. That language isn't just a way to describe the world. It's a way to defend it, to enchant it, and when necessary, to hide it from those who would strip it bare. In their ink strokes and knotwork, we find a message clearer than any cipher. Survival is a story, and every story demands a tongue brave enough to tell it. From the chiseled glyphs of Egyptian tombs to the knotted threads of Inca quipus, these 26 secret languages were never just tools for communication. They were fortresses built around the most sacred, dangerous, and revolutionary ideas of their time. Think about that for a moment. An entire civilization's survival might hinge on whether a priest could encrypt a flood prediction, or a mystic could disguise a healing ritual in plain sight. These weren't just codes, they were acts of defiance against oblivion itself. The Maya scribes who painted celestial equations into their bark paper books, the medieval alchemists who turned chemical formulas into symbolic poetry, they all understood that knowledge, once lost, can't be resurrected. But buried within their ciphers and symbols lies an even deeper truth. Language doesn't just describe reality, it shapes it. Consider the Quipu knots, those tactile maps of an empire's memory. To the Spanish conquistadors, they were primitive curiosities. To the Inca, they held the pulse of their world, tax records, star charts, maybe even epic poems waiting to be unfurled by fingertips. Or take the delicate swirls of Nushu, the clandestine script of Chinese women who turned embroidery into protest. Every stitch was a whisper, we exist. We remember, these systems challenge our most basic assumptions about writing. Who decided that language must live on flat surfaces, bound by margins? The Quipu's three-dimensional knots, the Nushu's fabric-embedded verses, they prove that words can soar beyond the page, woven into the very fabric of daily life. Yet for all we've decoded, some secrets refuse to yield. The Indus Valley script, with its playful unicorn seals and cryptic glyphs, might hold the blueprint to humanity's first urban revolution, or it might be an elaborate system of trademarks, forever blurring the line between writing and art. The Voynich Manuscript's botanical fantasies still taunt cryptographers, its pages a Rorschach test for every generation's obsessions. And what of the Etruscans, whose language influenced Rome yet vanished without a whisper? Their untranslated texts might rewrite the origins of Western civilization if we could only hear their voices. Here's the beautiful paradox: the more we uncover, the more we realize how much was designed to stay hidden. The Kabbalists didn't just encrypt their texts to protect them. They believed some truths could only be received by those ready to withstand their weight. The Druids forbade writing their knowledge not out of ignorance, but because some wisdom dies when pinned to parchment. Even today, as algorithms parse ancient symbols, we're forced to confront a humbling question. Are we decoding these languages, or are they decoding us? Every time we untangle a Celtic Ogam stone or a Hermetic cipher, we're not just solving a puzzle, we're being initiated into a mindset, a way of seeing the world that might be radically foreign to our own. So what's left for the modern seeker? The same burning curiosity that drove Champollion to crack the Rosetta Stone or Alice Cooper to dedicate her life to Linear B. History's greatest codes weren't broken by luck, but by obsession, by staring at symbols until they bled meaning. Maybe you'll be the one to spot the pattern in the Rongorongo glyphs, or hear the melody hidden in Cryptohe's sacred script. Or perhaps, like the Sufi poets, you'll find that the real treasure isn't in the solution, but in the seeking. One thing's certain, the past is far from finished speaking. Its languages wait, patient as stone, for the right ears to listen. Now it's your turn. What ancient cipher calls to you? Drop your thoughts below, and let's keep the conversation alive. And if you're hungry for more mysteries, hit that subscribe button, because history's vault is deeper than we ever